Public Interest, and I'm joined by the Indian ambassador to the United States, Harsh Shringla. Very appreciative to have your time here on your visit to Silicon Valley.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here where all the action is.
Well, we'd like to think there's a lot of things going on in Silicon Valley, but certainly we wanted to sit down with you for many reasons, but obviously you're thrust in the middle of a very important diplomatic situation going on between India and Pakistan, which has the world interested. And so we wanted to get your thoughts on what's really going on there on the ground and how the situation could potentially be alleviated, given that these are two nuclear powers and so much of the world is concerned about what's going on in India. So what can you tell our viewership about the latest going on in that situation?
I think the issue is not about two nuclear powers. The issue is about a continuous series of cross-border terrorist attacks that Pakistan has perpetrated on India. You are all aware of the Mumbai attacks in 2008. The Pakistan government at that time had asked us to share actionable intelligence, which we had done. You are aware of the attacks in Uri and Pathankot. We had shared similar intelligence, giving full details of who was involved, where they were involved, where these terrorists were coming from. Nothing has happened since then. In the wake of the Pulwama incident in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, we had also given adequate time for the Pakistan government to respond to those who had claimed responsibility for this attack. But again, there was an attempt to completely obfuscate facts and do nothing. So I think there was a stage in which obviously the people of India had lost patience with this situation of continuous cross-border attacks, low-intensity warfare. And we also had information, intelligence that there might be further attacks by the same group, the Jaish-e-Mohammed that perpetrated the Pulwama attacks. We had to take a preemptive strike. What is important to note is that strike was determined not only because this was the largest training camp for the Jaish-e-Mohammed, but also because it is a remote area in which there were no villages close by. There was no collateral damage. At the same time, this is not a military objective, not a military target. And so we made it a very telling point that any act of cross-border terrorism which would invite retribution, but retribution against non-state actors, retribution against those terrorists who are operating with impunity from Pakistan's territory. We have been very gratified by the response to the United States and the international community. You would have seen the statements that emanating from the White House and from the State Department, and also from 64 separate senators and congressmen who were very clear that strongly condemned the incident, the terrorist attacks against India, made it clear that Pakistan should not support and should not provide any safe havens for terrorists, and at the same time reinforced the need for further counterterrorism cooperation with India. You would also seen that in the latest Financial Action Task Force report, which was released on 22nd of February, makes it very clear that Pakistan has taken no actions against terrorist financing in its own territory. There is a great deal of material available to show that terrorist financing is continuing with impunity in that country. Again, nothing has been done. So unless the issue of terrorism in Pakistan is addressed and the infrastructure of terrorism in that country is tackled, we are not going to see the end of this problem. The international community has to continue to seek from Pakistan actionable action on the ground that they will not allow terrorism from their territory. They will start dealing with it with the seriousness that it deserves.
Well, for the first time, we saw commendation at the UN from both the US and France in support of India's position in the Jammu-Kashmir situation. But that being said, Pakistan continues to deny any involvement in this particular attack. So can you backpedal and can you trace that down for us? Why does Pakistan continue to refute any involvement?
Well, this is the same country that has continued to insist that Osama bin Laden was nowhere in their territory. But he was in Abbottabad, right next to the military cantonment. There is a certain extent to which you can believe what is being said, but clearly the international community decided that adequate opportunity has been given to Pakistan to address what is irrefutable evidence of terrorism emanating from its soil, and that not enough has been done, and this needs to be addressed.
Ultimately, here in Silicon Valley, you're on a visit meeting with a number of entrepreneurs, business leaders, and I'm sure a lot of them are maybe quietly talking to you privately saying, what can be done to fix the situation? Because we do believe in the future of South Asia, of India. How do you assuage any fears that this instability could cause an issue with their investment in India?
Let's be very clear that there is no threat to anyone's investment in India. There's a very strong return on investment. We are growing at 8% today. That contributes to 17% of global GDP growth. The economic fundamentals of our country are very strong. We should not allow the issue of terrorism to divert ourselves. If there is an attack in America on 9/11, are you going to withdraw your funding from the United States? You are going to reinforce your funding for that country. So I don't think there's any concern at all from anybody that there is any apprehension on that score. You have to see India as a country that is going to provide a very strong return on investment. It is a young country in which 50% of the population is below 25 years of age. As I said, we are growing very strong. The fundamentals of the economy are very strong. We expect to be a $5 trillion economy by the year 2024. In the next 8 years after that, we expect to become a $10 trillion economy. So if there is anything that, any advice that I have for investors who are listening to your viewership, I would say that this is the time to invest in this market of 1.3 billion people. By the year 2023, we will have the largest workforce in the world of 985 million people. And you can't go wrong with that sort of data and detail. You're right. I mean, our diplomatic service is very small in proportion to our global engagement. But over the last few years, we've tried to expand the numbers significantly. Parliament has given us an approval to increase our intake by about 300% or so.
Yes, that's right.
In the short time you've been ambassador, what have you gleaned? What have you learned since you've been in this role? I mean, what did you not know coming into the job that you know now?
Well, one thing is very clear is that when you come to the United States as India's ambassador, your brief is not just a bilateral engagement, but the United States, by the very nature of its engagement on a global basis, you have to be able to engage on regional issues, on global issues, which means that you're talking about everything from Afghanistan to Iran to Venezuela to what's happening in the Middle East. Your engagement is across the board, whether it's the Indo-Pacific, whether it's the Indian Ocean, whatever it is, it's part of your engagement with the United States. And I don't just mean with the official engagement of the State Department, but we engage with Congress, we engage with the media, we engage with think tanks, we engage with businesses, and so it's across the spectrum of people that are our interlocutors.
Tell us about constituent services. There's a lot of Indian Americans that are now engaged with India for the first time in a real strong sense because of there's been a big effort by Prime Minister Modi in particular coming to Silicon Valley, coming to New York, really trying to engage the diaspora. What do you see your role as ambassador? Is this something that you think is the right direction from India? Do you want to see even more engagement?
Well, the Prime Minister has certainly taken a lot of effort to try and get foreign-directed investments into India, to get the international investor community to support the flagship schemes of the Government of India like Make in India, Smart Cities, Digital India. And certainly this has borne fruit because we have seen over the last 4 or 5 years, $239 billion of investments coming into India. The Prime Minister has visited the United States on a number of occasions, and on every visit he's met the investor community, he's met high technology firms, he's come to Silicon Valley, he's gone to where these companies are. And I think that has inspired a lot of companies to go down to India. And it is our job as representatives of his government in the United States to follow up on these, to make sure that there is a focus on India, that we are attracting capital flows into India, we are attracting high technology into the areas that we need. The Prime Minister expects a lot of interest in areas like artificial intelligence, robotics, biotechnology, nanotechnology, space mining. These are areas that are cutting edge but are available in California, in the Silicon Valley, and we are working along with our Consul General in San Francisco and our colleagues here to try and tap that potential and take that vision of our Prime Minister forward through the investor community and high technology firms in this area.
Tell us about the U.S.-India relationship as it stands today. President Trump has had I think, a lot of admiration for India, but at the same time, there's a lot of tough talk, not just against India, but other countries with regard to tariffs and making sure America's interests are protected. Where is the U.S.-India relationship as it stands today, and where would you like it to go?
Well, we have a very robust relationship, but we have moved very far and very fast over the last decade or two. And I think today, as we see the relationship, it is across the board. There is no area in which we don't have a very meaningful engagement, not just in the political field, the business field, the defense field, but it's also in the field of environment, in the field of science and technology. And as I said, it's a very, very extended relationship. A lot of it has been underpinned by good relations between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of India. President Trump has attached a lot of importance to the relationship. When I called on him during my credential ceremony, he was very warm and effusive. He said he attached a lot of importance to the relations with India. And it's important that we continue in that direction. It's important that the leadership gives momentum to that relationship. It is beyond just small issues of trade, issues that might seem significant but can be easily resolved between the two countries. It has to be seen as a strategic partnership, one that straddles across the board, and India, of course, has been a very strong partner of the United States, not only in trade and in investments, but also in many other fields of mutual interest to both countries. So the relationship has to be seen in that perspective, and it's only when you look at it in entirety that you can, I think, do justice to that relationship. The good thing about diplomacy is that you meet, from my point of view at least, that you meet a wide variation of people, from people who are the top decision makers in any country to people who are, the movers and shakers of that particular society. But at the same time, I think if you are doing your job properly, you really need to get down to the grassroots level and meet people who also make things happen on the ground. I've always felt that in my profession, it's important to also have your ear to the ground, to be close to ground realities. So you're not, how would you say, you are fully aware of the pulse of that particular country.
Yes.
I can take the example of Bangladesh, where I was posted, where I traveled to about 45 of the 64 provinces, districts in that country. And many of them were inaccessible places. You went by boat, you walked, you went to places that were quite remote, but they gave you a tremendous sense of what was happening in the country, what the ordinary people thought, how we felt, and sentiments of that country. And so it was a tremendous experience from that point of view.
All things considered, you have a very short time as ambassador here in the United States. What would you like to get accomplished?
Well, yes, I mean, it's important to hit the ground running. You don't waste time when you get in here. I've spent 24 hours in San Francisco, and our Consul General has arranged a very, very comprehensive program. We have met a wide range of people from the Indian American community. We've met people who are high-tech investors. We've met people from the Bay Area Council. We just had a very nice session with members of the United States-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Essentially, we have covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. And that's how I see the relationship also and our work ahead of us. We have our work cut out for us. We have to move quickly to ensure that the momentum that we've achieved in our relationship is carried forward, that the priorities that have been determined by our government in terms of seeking more investments, seeking better technology, seeking better trade access on both sides is continued. And of course, we continue also in all the other areas in which we have an interest, including the strategic partnership, including the defense partnership, including the vibrant people-to-people contacts underpinned by a community of Indian Americans who have done all of us proud by their achievements in their country of citizenship. But they continue to harbor very, very positive emotions for their country of origin, which is India. And that for us is one of our greatest strengths in the United States.
What would you like Indian Americans to know about what the government is trying to do to help grow India, as well as develop a strong bond between the U.S. and India?
Well, one thing is certain is that the transformation of India is taking place at a rapid pace. India is changing at a pace that is unparalleled. Take the last 5 years alone into account. 5 years ago, India was the 11th largest economy in the world. Today, we are the 6th largest economy. The fundamentals of our economy are very strong. Inflation is down from over 10% to less than 6%. The fiscal deficit has been cut down from 6% to 3.4%. We've attracted $240 billion of foreign direct investment. The government has introduced macroeconomic reforms across the spectrum that benefit the people of India. The goods and services tax is a good example of a unified market in India. We have undertaken initiatives and programs that have transformed the country by way of Digital India, direct benefits transfers that make sure that bank accounts are opened for a large number of people who never had bank accounts before, to whom money is transferred directly now to their accounts, who are benefiting from the policies of the government. We've recently unveiled a huge medical insurance scheme called Ayushman Bharat, which covers 100 million of the poorest people in India. With a very small premium, you can get access to over $7,000 worth of medical support. So these are unprecedented steps, not only designed to take India forward economically, but also socially provide the underpinnings of a society that is safe, secure, comfortable, and increasingly prosperous. And I think that's the takeaway for the Indian American community, is that they'd be happy to see that the country of their origin today is a different country from what they left it. But what is important is that we are seeing Indian Americans increasingly taking an interest in their country, investing in India, providing their expertise, their experience, increasingly seeing how they can help India in attaining the levels of development that they would like to see India attain.
And finally, you have a very large election coming up in a few months. I know you're not involved in that part of things as a diplomat, but talk about the fact that NRIs now can get involved in the election. Tell folks about that process.
Well, the electoral exercise in India is a mammoth one. We have 897 million registered voters, out of which 180 million are first-time voters between the ages of 18 and 23. So that, if you look at it, the population of the entire voters in India is double the population of the United States. The number of first-time voters is the same as the electorate in Indonesia, which is the 4th largest country in the world in terms of population. Organizing that sort of election is a huge exercise, and one that has been, I think, done a number of times very successfully with the help of electronic voting machines. Why I'm mentioning this is that given the dimensions of that exercise, to extend this to a diaspora of 25 million is not going to be easy. To provide, for example, voting rights to 1 million Indian citizens living in the United States is going to be in many senses a logistical exercise that might be beyond our capacities to deal with. So it is a challenging task. What is clear is that the government has been considering this idea for some time to see how best it can be implemented. Once you implement it, it has to be done in a smooth manner that is provides the least amount of inconvenience to those who are voting in foreign countries. But you need to have the logistical wherewithal to be able to do it, and I think that's where we are at this point of time.
Is dual citizenship on the table at some point between folks that are from the United States and folks from India? Is that something that the government has considered?
Well, this is certainly something that the government has considered, but again, it has certain, comes into contradiction with certain provisions of our Constitution. At the same time, there are other pitfalls of dual nationality which have not been envisaged earlier. So we need to take all this into account and consider this in entirety before we take a considered decision on it. But as I said, I mean, this has been proposed, this has been considered, and this is continuing to be examined.
Well, I really appreciate the time here on your visit to Silicon Valley. You've made the rounds talking to so many different groups, even visiting UC Berkeley and Stanford. What do you think of Silicon Valley, and do you want to maybe have the embassy come out here more often, potentially?
Well, our Consul General, Master Sanjay Panda, actually suggested that. He said we haven't done enough to engage Silicon Valley. Perhaps we should have an outpost in the Silicon Valley. And it's a tempting idea because there's so much potential that is here. As I said, in the last 24 hours itself, we've met so many people who have an interest in India, who can contribute to our growth and development, who have the skills and technology necessary to make that valuable input and value addition to our growth. And certainly we are looking at how we can best harness all of these capacities, work with force multipliers like yourself to see how we can get the message across, and essentially try and, as I said, fulfill the vision of our Prime Minister to fully tap the potentials that exist on the West Coast, in California, in the Silicon Valley, vis-a-vis India.
We really appreciate your time. Indian Ambassador to the United States, Harsh Shringla. We'll have more.